At the age of 78, President Donald Trump faced an unforeseen ordeal when a mild heart attack struck during a grueling week of international negotiations, compelling him to spend 5 days confined to a bed at Walter Reed Medical Center under strict medical oversight. A figure whose identity was forged through relentless motion and unyielding command, he found himself ensnared in an unprecedented state of enforced stillness. For the first 3 days, he resisted this confinement with characteristic tenacity, orchestrating business from his hospital bed, fielding calls from global leaders, and maintaining his frenetic pace despite physicians' warnings. Then, on the third evening, his youngest son, Barron, arrived for what was intended as a routine family visit. Rather than delving into politics or commerce as was their norm, the 19-year-old college student uttered words that left his father speechless. What followed was the most candid exchange they had ever shared, a conversation that would indelibly alter their lives. The incident unfolded abruptly. President Trump was immersed in a high-stakes teleconference with European leaders, debating trade agreements that had been under discussion for months. The pressure had mounted, sleep was scarce, meals irregular, and the stakes extraordinarily high. No one in the room detected anything amiss until the president halted mid-sentence, his hand pressing against his chest, a fleeting grimace of discomfort crossing his face. Within minutes, a White House medical team was summoned. Their initial assessment was alarming enough to warrant an immediate transfer to Walter Reed, where a thorough examination confirmed their suspicions, a mild heart attack. Not a full cardiac event, but a stark warning that the president's body was rebelling against the relentless strain of his lifestyle. The news was kept remarkably discreet. A brief statement from the White House press secretary mentioned only that the president was undergoing routine medical checks and would work from Walter Reed for several days. No details about the cardiac nature of the issue were disclosed, and staff were instructed to maintain normal operations to quell unnecessary speculation or concern. Yet, behind closed doors, the matter was treated with grave seriousness. The president's personal physician, Dr. Mitchell Green, delivered a forthright assessment. Standing at the foot of the hospital bed where Trump lay connected to cardiac monitors, he stated unequivocally, "Mr. President, this is a warning we cannot overlook." His tone was firm. 5 days of complete bed rest under supervision, no exceptions. Trump's immediate response was predictable to those who knew him well. 5 days? Out of the question. I have a summit next week, 3 critical policy announcements, and a meeting with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Give me the medication I need, and let's be practical about this. Dr. Green, a veteran physician across multiple administrations, remained steadfast. With all due respect, sir, this is non-negotiable. Your heart is signaling a need to pause. Ignore it now, and the next episode could be far more severe. 5 days here under our care, or we risk irreversible consequences. The reality of the situation sank in, though reluctantly. For a man who had spent decades crafting an image of tireless vigor and iron will, being physically tethered to a hospital bed was not merely a medical directive, it posed a profound challenge to his self-perception. Trump's hospital room was equipped with secure communication lines, and despite medical advice, he persisted in attempting to conduct presidential duties from his bed. Staff rotated through briefings, while his phone buzzed incessantly with calls from world leaders. With each hour of inactivity, his agitation grew. His family visited in shifts, Melania arrived with quiet concern, his older children brought business updates, maintaining the family's signature focus on strength and forward momentum. The presidential suite at Walter Reed was designed for such contingencies, offering a secure environment where a national leader could receive treatment while continuing official functions. The room was swiftly outfitted with additional secure lines, computers, and essential technology to support core presidential responsibilities. Defying clear medical orders to rest, Trump established a rotating schedule of briefings with key aides. His chief of staff, national security advisor, and various cabinet secretaries came and went throughout the day, delivering updates and seeking resolutions on issues deemed too urgent to delay. The Chinese delegation awaits a response by tomorrow, his trade representative noted during one visit. Without clear parameters, they may withdraw entirely. His legislative director added during another briefing, Senate leadership needs guidance on the budget vote. They're holding the floor open, but time is running out. Between these official engagements, Trump's phone rang relentlessly with calls from global leaders offering well wishes following rumors of his hospitalization, while others pressed on diplomatic matters that couldn't wait for his recovery. Each conversation left him more frustrated, the limitations of negotiating at the highest level from a hospital bed becoming increasingly apparent. "Tell Chancellor Merkel I'll call back tomorrow with the latest figures," he instructed an aide after a particularly challenging discussion. "And get me an updated briefing on the Middle East situation. The Saudis are moving too fast, and we need to stay ahead." Dr. Green observed this whirlwind of activity with growing concern, noting the president's accelerated heart rate accompanying each new crisis or decision point. During medical rounds, he repeatedly emphasized the need for genuine rest, not just physical confinement. "Your body is trying to heal, Mr. President," he explained during one visit. "Every time you engage in these stressful interactions, you work against that process." Trump dismissed these concerns. "I've operated under pressure my entire life, Doctor. A minor heart hiccup won't change that." Yet as hours turned to days, the strain began to show. The constant interruptions, frustration of managing complex situations remotely, and physical limitations of his condition wore on him, becoming evident even to casual observers. The vibrant energy that had defined his public persona for decades seemed to wane, replaced by growing irritability and uncharacteristic moments of quiet distraction. His family coordinated their visits meticulously, each bringing their own approach. Melania came in the mornings, her concern evident in her careful scrutiny of the medical staff and gentle touches toward her husband. She brought fresh flowers and magazines to distract him, though they remained largely untouched on the bedside table. "You must listen to the doctors," she said softly during a rare private moment. "This time, it's something you can't just push through." His older children tackled the situation differently. Don Jr. and Eric delivered business updates with an intentionally upbeat tone, downplaying the hospitalization severity. "Everything's under control," Don Jr. assured. "The markets barely reacted to the news of your routine checkup. The media's digging for details, but we're keeping them in the dark about the heart issue." Ivanka's visits focused more on state affairs. Her role as an advisor allowed her to bridge the gap between family member and staff. "We've rescheduled the Economic Council meeting," she explained efficiently, "and the Veterans Bill signing can happen here if you're still under observation on Thursday." Throughout these interactions, the family upheld their characteristic emphasis on strength and progress. Vulnerability went unaddressed, fear unacknowledged, and the deeper implications of health concerns remained carefully unexplored. It was business as usual, merely relocated. On the third evening, during what was meant to be a standard family visit, Barron arrived alone. Now 19 and a sophomore in college, he had evolved into a reflective young man, largely staying out of the political spotlight. Unlike the visits from his siblings, which centered on logistics and timelines, Barron simply took a seat by his father's bed, watching the machines monitoring his heartbeat. The shift change at Walter Reed was underway, bringing a quieter atmosphere to the hospital corridors as evening lights dimmed to encourage patient rest. Secret Service agents stationed outside the presidential suite nodded respectfully as Barron approached, one stepping forward to open the door. "Good evening, Mr. Trump," the agent said quietly. "The president is alone now. His last briefing ended about 20 minutes ago." Barron thanked him with a slight smile. At 19, he had grown tall, standing just over 6 feet, his lanky teenage frame maturing into that of a young adult. Unlike his older siblings, who eagerly embraced public roles in their father's political and business world, Barron had deliberately kept his distance. His college studies in international relations and psychology reflected a thoughtful nature favoring analysis over attention. Entering the hospital room, Barron was struck by how different his father appeared in this setting. The man who had dominated boardrooms, rally stages, and global summits seemed diminished against the stark white hospital sheets. The presidential seal on the wall behind the bed heightened the contrast between office and the individual occupying it. Trump looked up from his phone as Barron entered, his expression brightening. There he is. I was wondering when you'd show up. Your studies must keep you busy. I came as soon as I could break away, Barron replied, setting down his backpack and settling into the chair. How are you feeling? Fine, fine. The doctors are overly cautious, as usual. I could run the country from the Oval Office instead of wasting time here, but they insist on these monitors and tests. Trump gestured dismissively at the surrounding medical equipment. It's all an overreaction to a minor issue. Barron nodded, but his gaze lingered on the cardiac monitor, its steady beeping a constant reminder of their true circumstances. Unlike the stream of visitors earlier that day, he brought no briefings, no urgent decisions. He was there simply as a son visiting his father, their relationship often overshadowed by the demands of the presidency and family dynamics. Initially, their conversation followed their typical superficial pattern: Barron's classes, recent polls, plans for upcoming events. But as the evening grew quieter and the constant interruptions from staff finally ceased, a shift occurred in the room's atmosphere. How are your courses going this semester? Trump asked, leaning back on his pillows. Still getting good grades? Barron shared updates about his classes, mentioning an engaging lecture on international economics and a challenging research project for his psychology seminar. His father listened with the same intensity he applied to political briefings, occasionally asking questions that revealed his pride in his youngest son's academic pursuits. And what about campus life? Any political issues I should know about? Trump ventured into familiar territory. College student polls are stronger than expected for our side. The discussion predictably turned to politics, approval ratings, midterm election forecasts, strategies for key battleground states. This was comfortable ground for both, a terrain they had navigated countless times before. Trump grew more animated, outlining his vision for the remaining months of his term, the fatigue momentarily lifting as he described future initiatives and campaign events. The rally next month in Pennsylvania will be massive, he said with enthusiasm. We're expecting a record crowd, bigger than ever before. An evening nurse arrived to check the president's vital signs and adjust his medications, providing a brief pause. During this interlude, Barron noticed the room had grown still. The incessant phone calls had ceased for the night, the flow of aides and advisors finally halted, and perhaps for the first time in days, his father wasn't actively engaged in presidential duties. In this rare moment of silence, Barron truly looked at his father and saw something he had never noticed before. His father looked exhausted, not just physically, but deeply, existentially so. For the first time, Barron saw beyond the presidential persona to the man beneath. The harsh hospital lighting spared no one, highlighting deep wrinkles etched around his father's eyes and mouth, the slight slump of his shoulders, the faint tremor in his hand as he reached for a glass of water on the bedside table. The constant projection of strength and confidence that defined Donald Trump in the public eye seemed to fall away in this private moment, revealing something more human and fragile. Barron observed not just physical exhaustion, though that was evident, but a profound weariness that seemed to transcend the immediate circumstances of hospitalization or presidential demands. Perhaps for the first time, he glimpsed the burden his father had carried for decades, the relentless pursuit of success, the constant battle for public approval, the unending need to project strength and dominance in every situation. This realization was both awe-inspiring and deeply moving. This man, who shaped global events and commanded worldwide attention, who built empires and held the nation's highest office, was at his core a mortal, vulnerable individual, perhaps lonelier than anyone could imagine. "Dad," Barron began quietly. "When I heard you were in the hospital, I realized something. I've been your son for 19 years, but I don't think I've ever really known you." The words hung between them, simple yet profound. Trump looked at his son in surprise, clearly caught off guard by this departure from their usual exchanges. "What do you mean?" he asked, his tone lacking its customary assurance. "You've lived with me your whole life." "Yes," Barron acknowledged, "but living with someone doesn't mean you truly know them." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We've always talked about surface things, my grades, your work, politics, business. But we've never talked about you, the person behind all that. Trump appeared genuinely perplexed by this observation. What's there to know? My life's an open book. Everyone knows everything about me. They know about President Trump or businessman Trump, Barron replied gently. But what about me, Dad? Who are you when there are no cameras, no deals to make, no elections to win? What ensued was an unexpectedly deep conversation in which Barron shared observations he had carried for years. He spoke of watching his father from afar, witnessing him command rooms and dominate discussions, but rarely seeing moments of genuine peace or contentment. He described how the family learned to communicate in terms of achievements and public image, rarely touching on fears, dreams, or what brought true joy. I've watched you my whole life, Barron continued, his voice soft but steady. I've seen you in boardrooms and at rallies, making deals and drawing attention. I've seen how people react to you, either loving or fearing you, but always reacting, as you fill every room you enter. He leaned forward slightly, his expression thoughtful. But I've rarely seen you at peace, simply content, not planning the next move or thinking about how it'll play in the media or with voters, just being present without an agenda or performance. Trump began to respond, perhaps to dismiss this insight or reframe it into his usual narrative of work ethic and success, but Barron gently pressed on. Our family talks a lot about achievements, buildings constructed, deals closed, elections won. We discuss strategy and public perception, how to handle criticism and leverage advantages, but we rarely talk about what makes us happy, what we fear, what we dream of beyond the next business triumph or political victory. The words seemed to resonate in the quiet hospital room, touching on truths long unacknowledged within the family. Trump's expression shifted, revealing a rare moment of self-reflection. That's how I was raised, he said finally. My father didn't believe in dwelling on feelings or personal struggles. He believed in results, in strength, in never showing weakness. That's what made him successful, and it's what made me successful too. I understand, Barron nodded. And I'm not criticizing that, but there's a difference between not dwelling on hardships and never acknowledging them. Between valuing strength and never allowing yourself moments of vulnerability. Even with the people who love you most. Barron shared how his fear for his father's health forced him to confront a painful possibility. What if something happened to you, and we never got to really talk? What if I inherited your name and legacy but never learned what makes you happy when no one's watching? When I got the call that you were in the hospital, he continued, his voice trembling slightly, my first thought wasn't about the presidency or political fallout. It was realizing that if something serious happened, we might never have a real conversation, not as president and first son, but just as father and son. He met his father's gaze, his expression open and honest. I realized I could inherit your name, your business, maybe even parts of your legacy, but still not know what makes you smile when no one's looking. What brings you peace? What do you fear, what do you hope for beyond the next win or achievement? Trump seemed genuinely struck by these words, his usual quick responses and deflections momentarily absent. The cardiac monitor beeped steadily in the background, a reminder of the fragility that precipitated this unusual moment of candor. I've spent my whole life with your name, Barron continued quietly. People place high expectations on me because of it. They make assumptions about who I am, what I believe, who I should be based on you. But sometimes I wonder if even I know who you really are beneath all these public images and duties. He spoke of his own struggles growing up in the shadow of such a prominent name, feeling pressure to either follow his father's path or completely reject it. He expressed a desire for something different, not the typical father-son dynamic built on business advice and political strategy, but a genuine connection rooted in mutual understanding and vulnerability. Growing up wasn't always easy, Barron admitted. There's constant pressure to either be exactly like you or fully reject what you stand for. To embrace the legacy or flee from it, sometimes it feels like there's no middle ground, no space to just be myself while still honoring our family. Trump's expression softened with genuine concern. I never wanted you to feel that kind of pressure. That's why we tried to keep you out of the spotlight when you were younger. I know, Barron acknowledged, and I appreciate that. But the pressure isn't just external, it's not just from the media or public expectations. It's also what I feel within our family. The unspoken assumption that success looks a certain way, that strength means never showing doubt or pain, that victory is always the ultimate goal. He shifted in his chair, leaning closer to his father's bed. I don't want our relationship to be built on business advice or political strategy. That's important, but it's not everything. I want a deeper connection, based on truly knowing each other, understanding each other's hopes and fears, being able to be honest about struggles without fearing disappointment. Trump looked genuinely perplexed, as if this concept of relationship was foreign to his experience. What would that look like? What are you suggesting? Conversations like this, Barron replied simply, where we talk about real things, not just achievements or plans, where we can express doubts or concerns without it being seen as weakness, where we can share what truly matters to us beyond the next deal or election. Most compellingly, Barron shared his observation that his father had expended so much energy being strong for everyone else, family, country, supporters, that he might have forgotten how to simply be human with those who loved him most. Dad, I've thought a lot about this, Barron said, his voice soft but direct. You've been strong for everyone else your whole life, for your business partners and employees, for our family, for the entire country, for all your supporters who look to you as a leader. You never show tiredness, doubt, or pain. You always have answers, make decisions, are the one everyone relies on. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But I wonder if, in always being that person for everyone else, you've forgotten how to just be human with those who love you most. If you've been strong for so long, maybe you don't know how to let someone else be strong for you sometimes. The observation hung between them, profound in its simplicity and accuracy. Trump turned away, his gaze fixed on the window where night had fully fallen, the hospital room reflected in the dark glass. Being strong is what people expect from me, he said finally. It's what they need from me. Maybe, Barron conceded, in certain contexts, at certain times, but not always, and not with everyone, not with family, not with me. For perhaps the first time in decades, Trump lacked an immediate response. The hospital room, with its enforced quiet and medical monitoring, created a space where his usual tactic of deflecting or redirecting didn't work. He couldn't escape into phone calls or meetings. He was compelled to listen and absorb his son's words. This was a defining moment. Donald Trump, a man known for always having an answer, dominating every conversation, never allowing a hint of uncertainty, fell silent. The absence of his characteristic quick rebuttal or redirection was perhaps more striking than any words could be. The clinical lighting and medical equipment of the hospital room created an unexpected refuge from the constant demands and performances of public life. There were no cameras, no supporters to rally, no opponents to outmaneuver. The cardiac monitors and 4 drips served as physical reminders of limitations that couldn't be argued away or overcome by sheer will. In this rare space of enforced stillness and vulnerability, Trump seemed to truly hear his son's words, taking them in without immediately crafting a response or defense. The silence that followed was not awkward but laden with the weight of a truth long avoided, finally acknowledged. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable but deep, filled with years of unexpressed thoughts, missed opportunities for deeper connection, and a sudden awareness of how much their relationship had been a performance rather than a lived reality. The only sounds in the room were the steady beeps of the heart monitor and the muffled noises of the hospital beyond the door. Father and son sat together in this moment of unusual candor, not rushing to fill the quiet with trivialities or a swift change of topic. This concludes our narrative journey. I trust you found this gripping saga of intrigue, cutting-edge innovation, and astonishing discoveries captivating. From where are you tuning in today? I'm curious to learn which corner of the globe this tale has touched. If this escapade held your interest, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for a steady stream of compelling, mind-expanding stories just like this one. Fresh material is posted frequently, ensuring you're always in the loop for the newest spellbinding adventures. Be sure to pass this video along to your loved ones and friends. It's a great way to share positivity and insight while expanding our circle of story enthusiasts. Your encouragement is invaluable. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to welcoming you back for the next tale.